Welcome to Obrixen. Today we bring you the full story of Ruth Thalía Sayas Sánchez, a case that cracked open Peru's deepest wounds and still echoes across Latin America. This episode is not just about crime, but about truth, power, pain, and the price we pay for spectacle. I'm Daniel.
And I'm Luna. We'll take you from Ruth's earliest days to her last moments, from the TV studio's dazzling lights to the darkness of the crime, through every step of the investigation, the trial, the media storm, and the reforms and activism that followed. We'll argue, analyze, and feel every step. Subscribe for fact-first ethical storytelling. No detail left unexplored.
Let's start at the beginning. Ruth Thalía Sayas Sánchez was born November 10, 1992, in San Juan de Lurigancho, Lima's largest, most densely populated, and economically challenged district. Her parents, Judith Sanchez and Leoncio Sayas, raised her and her younger sister Eva with warmth and discipline. Ruth was bright, ambitious, and deeply loving, but she lived in a world where poverty forced hard choices.
In Peru, 2012, the gap between rich and poor was immense. For young women, especially those from vulnerable areas, opportunities were limited and dangers many. Ruth worked as a hostess in nightclubs, studied hard, and dreamed of university. Her family depended on her income. She loved music, poetry, and helping her mother around the house.
Ruth started dating Brian Romero Leyva, also 19, a charismatic but increasingly possessive young man. Friends saw warning signs: Brian's jealousy, his need to control, his inability to handle shame. But Ruth, hopeful and trusting, believed she could balance love and independence.
Everything changed in July 2012 when Ruth was selected as the first contestant on El Valor de la Verdad, the value of truth. The show, created and hosted by Beto Ortiz, was a sensation in Peru. Ortiz was a controversial figure: journalist, writer, provocateur. He built his career on exposing secrets and scandals, often ignoring the ethical consequences.
El Valor de la Verdad was modeled on Western reality formats but pushed boundaries. Contestants sat in the chair of truth, facing a polygraph and a barrage of personal questions for cash prizes. The stakes were high, not just money, but reputation, dignity, and sometimes safety. Ortiz's style: probing, empathetic on the surface, but always searching for ratings gold.
On July 7, 2012, Ruth entered the studio. The audience buzzed. Her boyfriend Brian watched from the wings, nervous. Beto Ortiz, dressed sharply, greeted her with a smile. But behind the smile, many saw calculation. Ortiz had a history of targeting vulnerable guests, especially women, for maximum drama.
The questions began gently. Have you ever worked as a hostess? Ruth, honest and unflinching, replied, yes. She explained that her family needed the money. The polygraph confirmed her truth. Ortiz pushed further. Have you consumed alcohol before age 18? Ruth answered, yes. The audience laughed, but Ruth's composure never cracked.
Then the questions turned dark. Ortiz asked, have you ever received money for sexual favors? Ruth paused, then replied, hesitant but firm, yes. The studio froze. Brian looked as though he'd been struck. Ortiz let the silence linger, his eyes locked on Ruth, the cameras rolling. Ruth explained, poverty, desperation, not shame.
Beto Ortiz was relentless. He pressed Ruth on infidelity, secrets kept from Brian, her feelings of isolation and anxiety. Ruth answered every question with grace, but the cost was immense. The show's format, designed for drama, made Ruth the center of a storm
By the end, Ruth had revealed secrets she'd kept for years. She won 15,000 soles, about $5,000, but paid a much higher price: the loss of privacy, safety, and trust.
The next day, Peru erupted. Social media exploded. Some praised Ruth's honesty. Others condemned her morality. Brian's reaction was complex. Public support, private rage, humiliation.
The aftermath was brutal. Ruth faced gossip, judgment, and threats. Brian became increasingly controlling and abusive. Friends noticed his anger growing, his obsession with Ruth's betrayal. Ruth's family tried to protect her, but the pressure mounted.
Ruth's mother, Judith, was her anchor. She pleaded with Ruth to ignore the haters, to focus on their love. But Ruth felt isolated, overwhelmed. She withdrew, stopped seeing friends, and confided only in her mother.
On September 11, 2012, Ruth disappeared. Judith reported her missing on September 12th. The family searched everywhere: hospitals, police stations, morgues. The media seized on the story, turning Ruth's disappearance into a daily spectacle.
Detective Luis Astorga led the investigation. He was experienced, determined, and skeptical of Brian's story. Brian claimed Ruth left to meet a friend, but phone records told another story. Calls with Ruth, surveillance footage near her home, and witnesses who saw Brian acting suspiciously.
The police dug deeper. Brian's behavior was erratic: evasive answers, angry outbursts, contradictory statements. Forensic psychologists analyzed his interviews, noting signs of narcissism, manipulation, and rage. Ruth's family insisted Brian was involved.
The media's role was enormous. Every day, new headlines, TV debates, radio call-ins. Beto Ortiz gave interviews defending his show. "We show the truth, no matter how painful." Critics accused him of exploiting Ruth for ratings, ignoring the duty of care owed to young, vulnerable guests.
As days passed, the search intensified. Social media trended #Justicia para Ruth. The public demanded answers. Brian sent threatening messages to Ruth before and after the show. The pressure mounted.
On September 26, 2012, Brian confessed. He told police he killed Ruth, buried her in Jicamarca, and was aided by his father, Reddy Leyva Cerrón, 42. Police rushed to the scene. Ruth's body was found wrapped in plastic, shallowly buried. The autopsy? Asphyxiation by strangulation.
Brian and Reddy were arrested, charged with aggravated homicide and obstruction of justice. The prosecution, led by Dr. Jose Luis Perez Guadalupe, presented overwhelming evidence: Brian's confession, forensic reports, phone records, and witness statements.
The trial began November 2012. Judge Martha Flores presided. Ruth's family attended every hearing. Judith, Ruth's mother, was a constant presence, grieving, dignified, demanding justice. Brian showed little emotion. Psychologists described him as narcissistic, manipulative, prone to rage. Reddy was stoic, silent.
The verdict: Brian Romero Leyva sentenced to 33 years in prison. Reddy Leyva Cerrón to 30 years. The court cited cruelty, premeditation, and lack of remorse. Peru's justice system, often criticized for leniency, made a rare example.
Ruth's grave became a pilgrimage site. Her family started a support group for victims of gender violence. The case changed national law: stricter penalties for femicide, new protections for victims, and a media ethics debate that still rages.
Beto Ortiz, meanwhile, continued his career, but faced massive backlash. Media critics, psychologists, and activists hammered his role. You turned pain into spectacle. You put a young woman's life at risk for ratings. Ortiz defended himself, but the damage was done. His show changed format. Later guests received more support.
Ruth's case inspired other victims to come forward, but also exposed the dangers of public confession. The line between truth-telling and exploitation blurred. Peru debated. Should TV shows pry into intimate secrets? Who is responsible when vulnerability meets spectacle?
Ruth's family struggled to heal. Judith became an activist, speaking at schools and conferences about gender violence, media responsibility, and the importance of compassion. Brian's family withdrew from public life, shunned by the community.
Ruth became a symbol, not just of tragedy, but of courage. Her name is invoked in classrooms, legal debates, and media ethics workshops. The hashtag Justicia para Ruth still trends on anniversaries.
Beto Ortiz's career before El Valor de la Verdad was marked by controversy, aggressive interviews, scandals, and a reputation for pushing ethical boundaries. The show itself was modeled on Western truth formats, but Peru's social context made the risks higher: poverty, patriarchy, and weak protections for women.
Ortiz's questions were not random. He deliberately targeted the most vulnerable: young women, poor families, marginalized groups. The ratings soared, but so did the consequences. Psychologists warned, public humiliation can trigger violence, trauma, and even death.
In Ruth's case, the show's producers took little responsibility. Ortiz insisted her choices were her own, but the public disagreed. Was Ruth fully informed of the risks? Did she receive psychological support? The evidence suggests not. The show's success came at the cost of a life.
Ruth's honesty was weaponized against her. Brian, humiliated and enraged, acted out of jealousy and a warped sense of honor. His father, Reddy, became complicit, helping hide the crime instead of stopping it.
The chain reaction. Ruth confesses intimate secrets on TV. Brian feels betrayed, loses face. Media amplifies the shame. Public judges ruthlessly. Brian's anger turns lethal. Ruth is murdered, her family destroyed. Peru debates media ethics, gender violence, and responsibility.
The process, step by step. 1. Ruth appears on El Valor de la Verdad, July 7, 2012. 2. Secrets revealed. Relationship with Brian deteriorates. 3. Ruth receives threats, faces isolation. 4. Ruth disappears, September 11, 2012. 5. Family and police search, media frenzy. 6. Brian confesses, body found, September 26, 2012. 7. Arrests, trial, sentencing, November 2012. 8. National debate, legal reform, activism.
Ruth's murder was not isolated. Peru saw a surge in femicides, many triggered by jealousy, shame, and media exposure. Ortiz's show faced new scrutiny, and other networks followed suit, reforming their formats.
In 2016, Arlette Contreras survived a brutal attack, sparking the hashtag #NIUNAmenos movement. Ruth's story became a reference point: the dangers of public shame, the need for protection, the responsibility of media.
Latin America as a whole grappled with femicide. Ruth's case is cited in UN reports, legal studies, and psychology textbooks. The pattern: young women, exposed to risk, become targets for violence. Media plays a double role, revealing injustice, but sometimes fueling it.
Ruth's legacy: stronger laws protecting women, support networks for survivors, ethical guidelines for media and entertainment, ongoing debate about privacy, dignity, and the value of truth.
Let's return to the personalities. Ruth, honest, resilient, loving, ambitious. Brian, possessive, manipulative, unstable. Reddy, complicit, passive, secretive. Judith, grieving, activist, inspirational. Beto Ortiz, controversial, provocative, influential, responsible.
Ortiz's legacy is myth.
Media guidelines for vulnerable guests. New counseling services for victims of gender violence.
Today, Ruth's name is a call to action for justice, compassion, and responsibility. Her story is not just about crime, but about society's choices.
Let's go even deeper.
Ruth's case exposed gaps in Peru's legal system, police mishandling of missing persons, slow response times, lack of victim support. The government responded with new protocols, hotlines, and legal reforms. Still, many families faced the same struggles Ruth's did.
The ripple effects continued. Schools launched programs to teach respect, empathy, and gender equality. Journalists began advocating for ethical standards. Activists created shelters and legal aid centers. Every year, Ruth's story is retold as a warning and a hope.
Ruth's mother, Judith, became a national figure. Her speeches at rallies and universities are powerful. My daughter was brave. She paid the price for truth. We must protect young women, not exploit them. Judith's advocacy changed lives, but her grief never faded.
Brian's family, meanwhile, retreated from public life. Interviews reveal shame, regret, and anger, but little empathy for Ruth. Reddy Leyva Cerrone remains in prison, rarely speaking to the press.
Psychologists analyze Ruth's case as an intersection of trauma, poverty, and media exploitation. They warn, when entertainment ignores ethics, everyone suffers. Ruth's story is a teaching tool in universities worldwide.
Internationally, Ruth's case inspired documentaries, research papers, and even legal reforms in neighboring countries. Latin America, facing rising femicide rates, looks to Ruth's story as both tragedy and catalyst.
The media's responsibility remains a burning issue. New guidelines require psychological support for reality TV contestants, limits on questions about sexuality and trauma, and protections for vulnerable guests.
The ethics of Beto Ortiz's career are debated to this day. Some hail him as a truth teller, others brand him as a reckless opportunist. Ortiz himself admits regret, but defends free expression. The debate continues.
Ruth's story is not just Peru's. Around the world, young women face similar risks. The lessons: protect privacy, respect dignity, never trade safety for spectacle.
For Ruth, truth was a double-edged sword. Her courage changed laws, minds, and hearts, but the cost was her life. Her legacy, a safer, kinder world for those who follow.
Thank you for joining us on Obrixen. Subscribe, share, and stand for ethical, fact-driven storytelling.
Protect the vulnerable. Demand compassion. This was Daniel and Luna. See you soon.